The truck's engine finally died with a wheeze. It matched exactly how Lila felt inside. 5 years. 5 years since she'd driven down this same dirt road, except back then she'd been crying so hard she could barely see the path ahead of her. Now she sat in the driver's seat, hands gripping the steering wheel. Her knuckles had gone white from the pressure. The crescent moon-packed territory stretched out in front of her, looking exactly the same as the day she'd left. Same wooden cabins scattered between the trees, same main lodge with its wide front porch, same mountains rising up behind it all like they were standing guard. The only thing different was her. A howl echoed in the distance, deep and commanding. Lila's pulse jumped, recognizing something familiar in that sound. Her wolf stirred restlessly under her skin, responding to an alpha's call even after all these years, even after everything that had happened between them. She forced herself to breathe, in through her nose, out through her mouth, like the therapist in Portland had taught her. The metallic taste of fear coated her tongue. Lila grabbed her duffel bag from the passenger seat and forced herself out of the truck. Her legs felt shaky. But she'd been driving for 6 hours straight. That had to be why. Nothing to do with nerves. Nothing to do with the possibility that she might see him before she was ready. The pack house door opened before she even made it halfway up the front steps. Lila Chen, Marcus, the pack's beta, stood in the doorway, looking like he'd aged a decade since she'd seen him last. Gray streaked his dark hair now, and new lines creased the corners of his eyes. His scent was the same, though, earth and leather and the faint musk of authority. "Hey, Marcus." She shifted the bag strap on her shoulder, feeling the weight of everything she owned in the world. "Thanks for letting me stay while I figure things out. Your father was a good man. Pack takes care of its own." He stepped aside to let her pass, his movements careful, respectful but cautious, even when they've been gone a while. The main room felt smaller than she remembered. Same stone fireplace with its blackened hearth. Same mismatched furniture that had been donated by various pack members over the years. Same smell of pine wood and coffee that had been home for the first 18 years of her life. But now the scents felt foreign on her tongue, like she was tasting them through a stranger's nose. Her wolf whined softly, recognizing home and mourning it at the same time. "Most everyone's out on patrol or working," Marcus said, watching her take it all in. His eyes were kind but wary. "Dinner's at 6 if you want to join." "No pressure." Lila nodded, though her stomach was already twisting at the thought of facing a room full of people who remembered exactly why she'd left. People who'd watched their future alpha reject her in front of the entire pack. "Where should I put my stuff?" "Guest room upstairs, 3rd door on the left." Marcus paused, his weathered hands clasping behind his back. "Lila, things have changed around here. Kai's not the same person you knew before." At the mention of that name, something sharp and painful twisted in her chest. Her breath caught, and she had to swallow hard against the sudden tightness in her throat. She'd known she'd have to see him eventually, had spent the entire 6-hour drive trying to prepare herself for it, but hearing his name out loud made her realize how stupid she'd been to think she could ever be ready. "I'm not the same person either." She managed. Her voice came out steadier than she felt. Marcus studied her face for a long moment, taking in the new lines around her eyes, the way she held herself differently, more guarded, more careful. "No, I suppose you're not. Just be careful. He's Alpha now, has been for 3 years. Alpha." Of course he was. Kai had always been destined for that role. From the moment he'd shifted for the first time and revealed a wolf twice the size of anyone else in the pack, strong, powerful, perfect, everything she wasn't. The old wound throbbed in her chest, phantom pain from a bond that had been severed before it could fully form. "I'll keep that in mind," Lila said. She climbed the stairs on legs that felt like they belonged to someone else. The sound echoing in the quiet hallway. The guest room was basic but clean, a bed with a simple blue quilt, a dresser that had seen better decades, a window that looked out over the forest where she'd spent her childhood running wild. She dropped her bag on the floor and sat on the edge of the mattress. The springs protested softly. What the hell was she doing here? Her apartment lease in Portland had run out. Her job at the coffee shop had ended when the owner sold the building. Her savings account had exactly $412 in it. When Marcus had called to tell her that her father's old cabin was still empty if she wanted to come back and fix it up, it had seemed like a sign. Now it just seemed like the worst idea she'd ever had. Another howl echoed through the forest outside her window, closer this time, deep and commanding, the kind of sound that made every wolf in hearing distance stop what they were doing and pay attention. Her wolf lifted its head, ears pricked forward with interest that bordered on longing. Lila's heart slammed against her ribs. She knew that howl, had heard it in her dreams for 5 straight years, had woken up countless nights with the echo of it still ringing in her ears and tears on her cheeks. Before she could talk herself out of it, she was back downstairs and pushing through the front door. The late afternoon sun filtered through the trees, casting everything in golden light that made the forest look like something out of a fairy tale. She followed the sound deeper into the woods, her feet remembering paths she hadn't walked since she was a teenager. Muscle memory guided her steps, past the old oak with the lightning scar down its trunk, around the boulder that looked like a sleeping bear, through the gap in the blackberry thicket that had snagged her clothes 100 times during her childhood. She found him in the clearing by the memorial stones. Kai stood with his back to her, head tilted toward the sky, like he was scenting the wind. He'd grown taller in the years since she'd seen him, broader through the shoulders. His dark hair was shorter now, more controlled. Everything about him screamed alpha, from the way he held himself to the power that seemed to radiate from his skin like heat from a fire. Even from behind, she could see the changes. The way his muscles moved under his shirt spoke of constant training, constant readiness. His stance was wider, more stable, like he expected to have to fight at any moment. He turned around slowly, and Lila's breath caught in her throat. The boy she'd known was gone completely. In his place stood a man with sharp cheekbones and ice-cold green eyes that seemed to look straight through her. A scar cut across his left temple, disappearing into his hairline. Another marked his jaw. A thin white line that spoke of violence she hadn't been here to witness. His mouth, which had once smiled at her like she was the only person in the world who mattered, was set in a hard line. Lila. Her name sounded different in his voice, rougher like it hurt him to say it, like the syllables were made of broken glass. Kai. She wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly wishing she'd stayed in the guest room. Her wolf was practically vibrating with the need to move closer to him, to touch him, to confirm he was real and whole and here. She ignored the instinct. That way lay madness. "I heard you howl," she said, because the silence was becoming unbearable. "I smelled you the moment you crossed pack lines." His eyes moved over her face, cataloging the changes 5 years had brought, taking inventory of new lines, new shadows. The way her cheeks had hollowed out. "You're thinner." The observation hit her like criticism. She lifted her chin. "You're taller." Among other things. They stared at each other across the clearing, 20 feet of space that might as well have been 20 miles. The air between them felt electric, charged with something that made Lila's skin prickle and her wolf stir restlessly under the surface. This was a mistake. She should have stayed in Portland, should have figured out some other way to make rent and buy groceries, should have done anything except come back here and put herself through this torture all over again. "Why did you come back?" Kai asked. His voice was carefully neutral. But she caught the slight tightening around his eyes, the way his hands clenched and unclenched at his sides. The question hit her like a slap. Does it matter? Everything that happens in my territory matters. He took a step forward, and sunlight caught the golden flecks in his green eyes. Alpha eyes, designed to command and intimidate. His territory. Right, because he was alpha now, and she was just another pack member to keep track of. Just another responsibility to catalog and manage. I won't cause any trouble, she said. Her voice came out smaller than she intended. I'm just here to fix up my father's cabin and figure out what to do next. Something flickered in his eyes. Pain, maybe, or regret. It was gone too quickly to be sure. The cabin's been empty for 5 years. It'll need a lot of work. I can handle it. Can you? He took another step closer. And Leela caught his scent on the breeze. Pine and leather and something uniquely him that made her knees go weak, made her wolf whine with longing. You couldn't handle much when you left. The words were like a knife between her ribs. She sucked in a sharp breath, tasting the metallic edge of old pain. Her wolf snarled, wanting to lash out, to make him hurt the way she was hurting. She lifted her chin and met his stare head-on. I was 18 and heartbroken. I'm 23 now and I've learned how to take care of myself. Have you? Another step closer. Close enough now that she could see the flecks of gold in his eyes, the way his pupils dilated slightly when he looked at her. You look like you haven't eaten a decent meal in weeks. Heat flooded her cheeks. Stop. Stop what? Stop looking at me like that. Stop acting like you care whether I'm eating or sleeping or anything else. Her hands were shaking now, 5 years of buried pain and anger rising up in her throat like acid. You gave up that right 5 years ago. Kai went very still. Even his breathing seemed to stop. Leela, no, the word exploded out of her. You made your choice. You stood in front of the entire pack and told everyone that I wasn't good enough to be your mate, that my bloodline was too weak, that you'd rather die alone than be tied to someone like me. His face went pale beneath his tan. I never said, you didn't have to say it. Everyone knew what you meant. Tears burned behind her eyes, but she'd be damned if she let them fall. Not here, not in front of him. So don't stand there now and pretend you care about my health or my well-being or anything else. We both know better. She turned to walk away, her heart hammering so hard she could hear it in her ears. The forest blurred around her, and she realized she was crying after all. 5 years of carefully built walls crumbling in the space of a single conversation. I'm assigning you to work at the pack house. His voice stopped her cold. She spun back around, sure she'd misheard. What? You need a job. The pack house needs help with maintenance and organization. His expression was unreadable, but something in his eyes looked almost desperate. You'll work directly under me. Are you insane? The words burst out of her before she could stop them. Her wolf was pacing now, agitated and confused by the mixed signals. I can't work with you. You can and you will. His voice carried all the authority of an alpha command, rolling over her like a physical force. But underneath the command, she heard something else. Something that sounded almost like pleading. Unless you'd prefer to leave again. It was a challenge, and they both knew it. He was betting that she'd run rather than face the torture of working beside him every day. Betting that she was still the same scared girl who'd fled in the middle of the night 5 years ago. Part of her wanted to prove him right, wanted to get back in her truck and drive away from here as fast as possible. It would be easier, safer. But she'd been running for 5 years, and she was tired of it, tired of letting fear make her decisions. Fine, she said, surprised by the steadiness in her own voice. When do I start? Something flickered across his face. Surprise maybe, or relief. Tomorrow morning, 7 a.m. Fine. They stared at each other for another long moment. The air between them crackled with tension and something else. Something that felt like hunger and longing and all the things they'd never be able to say to each other. Kai's hands were clenched into fists at his sides, and she could see the fine tremor running through his shoulders, like he was fighting some internal battle. Then he turned and walked away without another word. Leaving Leela alone in the clearing with her racing heart and the terrible knowledge that coming home had been both the best and worst decision she'd ever made. The walk back to the pack house felt endless. Every step carried her further from the clearing where Kai's scent still lingered in the air, but closer to a building full of people who would want to know why she'd been gone so long, why she'd come back, why the Alpha had been talking to her in the forest. By the time she reached the front porch, her hands were shaking again. That night, she lay in the narrow guest room bed and stared at the ceiling. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Kai's face, the way he'd looked at her in the clearing, the way his voice had sounded when he'd said her name. 5 years ago, she'd believed they were fated mates, had felt it in every cell of her body, every beat of her heart. The moon goddess had made them for each other. Two halves of the same soul. Then he'd rejected her in front of everyone. And she'd learned that fate didn't mean much when it came up against pack politics and bloodline expectations. She'd been nobody, the daughter of a mid-level enforcer with no special gifts or talents, no alpha blood in her veins, no powerful family connections, just a girl who'd been stupid enough to think that the future pack leader could love someone like her. The rejection had nearly killed her. For weeks afterward, she'd felt like she was dying from the inside out, like something vital had been ripped away from her and she'd never be whole again. Her wolf had retreated so deep inside her that she'd wondered if it would ever surface again. Eventually, the worst of the pain had faded, but it had never gone away completely. Even now, 5 years later, she could feel the echo of that broken bond like a scar across her heart. And tomorrow, she was going to work beside him like none of it had ever happened. Lila rolled over and pressed her face into the pillow. She had to be the biggest fool who'd ever lived. But she wasn't running again. Whatever happened next, she was going to face it head on, even if it destroyed her. Lila arrived at the pack house at 6:55 a.m. Coffee in hand and her heart hammering against her ribs. She'd barely slept. And when she had dozed off, her dreams had been full of Kai's dark eyes and the way he'd said her name like it hurt him. The main office was on the second floor, past a gauntlet of curious stares from early rising pack members. She could hear them whispering as she walked by, catching fragments like weak bloodline and why did she come back and Alpha's lost his mind. Each whisper felt like a small cut, but she kept her spine straight and her expression neutral. She'd learned how to armor herself against other people's opinions during her years away. Kai was already at his desk when she knocked on the doorframe. He looked up, and for just a second, something flashed across his face. Relief, maybe, or hunger. Then his expression went cold and professional. "You're early," he said. His hair was still damp from a shower, and she caught the scent of his soap. Something clean and masculine that made her wolf stir with interest. "You said 7. "It's 7. She glanced at the clock on his wall, noting the 2 minutes she had to spare. "I said 7. It's 6:58. Heat rose in her cheeks. Of course he'd noticed. "Should I come back in 2 minutes? The corner of his mouth almost twitched. "Almost. Sit down, Lila." She took the chair across from his desk, hyper-aware of the space between them. Too close and not nearly close enough. Everything in her body was screaming at her to move closer to him, to touch him, to breathe in more of his scent. She gripped her coffee cup tighter and tried to ignore the instinct. "Your main responsibility will be coordinating with the patrol teams," Kai said, his voice cutting through her spiraling thoughts. "Making sure coverage is adequate. Schedules are maintained. Any incidents are reported directly to me." "Okay." She pulled out a notebook, grateful to have something to do with her hands, something to focus on besides the way his shirt stretched across his shoulders when he moved. What else? Pack disputes that don't require alpha intervention, supply inventory, liaison work with neighboring packs. He slid a thick folder across the desk, careful not to let their fingers touch. Everything you need to know is in there. But their fingers brushed anyway when she reached for the folder. The contact was brief, barely a second, but it sent electricity shooting up her arm. Her wolf lifted its head, suddenly alert and interested. Kai jerked his hand back like he'd been burned. His pupils dilated, and she caught the faint scent of arousal before he could suppress it. The knowledge that he was affected too should have been satisfying. Instead, it just made everything more complicated. Any questions? His voice was rougher now, carefully controlled. Just one. She looked up at him, meeting his eyes directly. Why are you doing this? Doing what? Giving me a job that puts me right under your nose, making me work directly with you when half the pack thinks I shouldn't even be here. Kai was quiet for a long moment. His hands were flat on his desk, and she could see the tension in his shoulders. When he spoke, he didn't answer her question. Marcus will show you to your office. It's next door. Dismissal. Clear as day. Lila stood, clutching the folder against her chest like armor. Right, of course. She was almost to the door when he said her name. The sound of it in his voice made her stomach flutter. Lila. She turned back, hope and dread warring in her chest. If anyone gives you trouble, you tell me immediately. Understood? There was something fierce in his voice, something that made her wolf sit up and take notice, something that sounded almost possessive. I can handle myself, Kai. She'd learned how to fight her own battles during the years away. Had learned that she couldn't rely on anyone else to protect her. That wasn't what I asked. They stared at each other across the office. The air felt thick, charged with all the things they weren't saying, all the things they couldn't say. Fine, she said finally. Understood. The office next door was small but had a window overlooking the training grounds. Leela tried to focus on the stack of patrol schedules Marcus had left for her, but her eyes kept drifting to watch the younger pack members sparring below. She'd trained down there once, had spent hours learning to fight in both human and wolf form, dreaming of the day she'd be strong enough to stand beside the future alpha as an equal. Now those dreams felt like they belonged to someone else. So you're the infamous Lila. She turned to find a woman about her age leaning against the door frame. Tall, blonde, beautiful in that effortless way that some werewolves managed. Designer clothes that probably cost more than Leela had made in 6 months at the coffee shop. I'm sorry. Have we met? Stephanie Chen. My father's the beta. The woman stepped into the office without being invited, moving with the casual confidence of someone who'd never been told no. I have to say, I'm curious about what makes you so special. Leela's wolf bristled at the challenge in her voice. There was something territorial in the way Stephanie was looking at her, something that set every instinct on high alert. I'm not sure what you mean. Really? Stephanie perched on the edge of the desk, too close. Her scent was expensive perfume and barely contained aggression. Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like our alpha is showing some very interesting favoritism towards someone who's been gone for 5 years. If you have a problem with Kai's decisions, oh, I don't have a problem with anything Kai does. Stephanie's smile was sharp, predatory. We're very close, you know. Have been for years. The words hit Leela like a punch to the stomach. Her coffee cup rattled against the desk as she set it down with shaking hands. Of course there was someone else. Kai was 32, gorgeous, powerful. Did she really think he'd been celibate for 5 years, pining after the girl who'd run away? Her wolf whined softly, a sound of pure distress. That's nice, Leela managed. Her voice came out steady, which was a minor miracle. Stephanie stood, smoothing down her skirt with deliberate slowness. Just thought you should know how things stand around here. Wouldn't want you getting the wrong idea about anything. She left with a little wave, and Leela sank back into her chair. Her hands were shaking again, and there was a terrible hollow feeling in her chest. 5 years. She'd been gone 5 years, and life had moved on without her. Kai had moved on. What had she expected? She buried herself in work for the rest of the morning, cross-referencing patrol reports and incident summaries. The routine was soothing, familiar. She'd done similar work in her previous pack before everything had gone to hell there too. Numbers didn't lie. Spreadsheets didn't judge. Data didn't care about bloodlines or broken mate bonds or the way someone's scent could make your heart race. Around noon, Kai appeared in her doorway with 2 sandwiches and a bottle of water. The sight of him filled her entire field of vision, making her forget momentarily how to breathe. "Thought you might be hungry," he said, setting the food on her desk with careful precision. His movements were controlled, deliberate, like he was trying not to get too close. "Thank you." She didn't look up from her computer screen, afraid of what he might see in her eyes. "That's very thoughtful of you." "Lila." His voice was careful, measured. "Is everything all right?" Now she did look up. He was studying her with those dark eyes, and she could see genuine concern there. It made her chest ache with longing and loss. "I met Stephanie this morning," she said. "Better to get it out in the open than let it fester." Something shifted in his expression. His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "What did she say to you?" "Nothing dramatic. Just mentioned how close you two are." Lila kept her voice level, professional, like they were discussing patrol schedules instead of his personal life. "It's fine, Kai. I'm not 18 anymore. I understand how these things work." "Do you?" "You don't owe me explanations about your personal life." She clicked randomly on her computer, pretending to be busy. "We're colleagues now. Nothing more." Kai stepped into the office and closed the door behind him with a soft click. The sound made her pulse jump. "Stephanie and I are not together. It's none of my business either way. We went on a few dates. Last year. It didn't work out." His voice was tight, controlled. "She's been persistent about trying again." Lila's heart did something complicated in her chest, but she forced herself to shrug. "Okay." She's good at implying things that aren't true. "Kai, you really don't need to." "Yes, I do." He moved closer, and she caught his scent. Pine and leather and something uniquely him that made her wolf whine with longing. "Because you're sitting there, thinking I've been happily playing the field while you were gone, and that's not what happened." Her fingers stilled on the keyboard. What had happened? He was quiet for so long, she thought he wouldn't answer. When he did speak, his voice was low, rough. "I tried to forget you, tried to move on, find someone else. Do what everyone expected me to do." His hands clenched at his sides, knuckles going white. "And I couldn't." The admission hung in the air between them like a live wire. "Do you know what that's like?" he continued. "Knowing you're supposed to want someone, trying to force yourself to feel something that just isn't there?" Wiela's throat felt tight. She couldn't seem to get enough air. "Kai, I went on dates because the pack expected it, because everyone kept telling me I needed to find a mate, produce heirs, think about the future of the pack." His laugh was bitter, self-deprecating. "And every time I tried to kiss someone else, all I could think about was you." The words hung in the air between them, heavy with 5 years of suppressed longing. Wiela felt tears prick at the corners of her eyes. "That's not fair," she whispered. "I know. You rejected me, in front of everyone. You made it clear I wasn't good enough. I know." His voice cracked slightly. "Leela, A sharp knock on the door interrupted him. "Alpha?" A male voice, urgent. "Sorry to bother you, but we have a situation." Kai closed his eyes for a second, visibly pulling himself together. When he opened them again, he was Alpha first, man second. "Come in, Marcus." The door opened to reveal the pack's beta, his weathered face creased with concern. His gaze flicked between them, taking in the tension, but he was too professional to comment. "What's the situation?" Kai asked, his voice completely steady now. "Border Patrol found tracks. 3 wolves. Unfamiliar scent. They were definitely scouting our territory." Kai's entire demeanor changed, shifting from the man who'd just been confessing his feelings to the alpha responsible for protecting his pack. His shoulders squared, his stance widened, even his scent changed, taking on the sharp edge of authority and controlled violence. "How fresh?" "Less than an hour. They circled the eastern boundary and then headed back toward Blackwood territory." Leela's blood went cold. Blackwood pack had a reputation for aggression, territorial disputes. If they were scouting, double the patrols, Kai ordered. "I want eyes on every inch of our borders, and send word to the other pack leaders. If Blackwood is making moves, everyone needs to know. Already on it, Alpha. Marcus left, and Kai turned back to Leela. The moment between them was gone, shattered by reality and responsibility. I need to go deal with this, he said. Of course. She tried to keep the disappointment out of her voice. He paused at the door, his hand on the frame. We're not done talking. Maybe we should be. Leela. Go, Kai. Your pack needs you. He left, and Leela slumped back in her chair. Her sandwich sat untouched on the desk, her appetite completely gone. Outside, she could hear the sounds of increased activity as the pack responded to the potential threat. This was what it meant to care about an alpha. Everything else came second to pack safety. Everything else came second to duty and responsibility and the weight of protecting hundreds of lives. She'd known that once, had forgotten it during her years away. The rest of the day passed in a blur of increased activity. Pack members moved with purpose and barely contained anxiety. Lila threw herself into coordinating the expanded patrol schedules. Grateful for the distraction, numbers were easier than emotions. Logistics were simpler than feelings. It was past 8 p.m. when she finally looked up from her computer to find the office dark outside her small circle of lamplight. Her neck ached, and her eyes were gritty from staring at spreadsheets for hours. Working late? Kai stood in the doorway, looking exhausted. His hair was mussed. And there was dirt on his clothes like he'd been running patrol himself. Dark circles shadowed his eyes. Just finishing up the new schedules, she said, saving her work automatically. How bad is it? Could be nothing. Could be everything. He rubbed his face with both hands, the gesture making him look younger, more human. Blackwood's Alpha has been making noise about territory expansion. Our land borders some prime hunting grounds. And if they decide to make a move? Then we fight. The simple certainty in his voice sent a shiver down her spine. No hesitation, no doubt. Just the grim acceptance of what leadership sometimes required. This was what it meant to be mated to an alpha. The constant threat of violence, the weight of protecting hundreds of pack members, the impossible decisions that came with leadership. You should go home, Kai said, though he made no move to leave himself. Get some rest. So should you. I will, soon. But they both knew he was lying. He'd be here until dawn, coordinating defenses and contingency plans, because that's what alphas did. That's what the position demanded. Lila saved her work and shut down the computer. As she gathered her things, she was painfully aware of Kai watching her every movement. His gaze felt like a physical touch. Lila, he said as she reached the door. She turned back, hope and dread warring in her chest. What I said earlier. Let's just focus on the pack crisis right now, okay? She couldn't handle another emotional revelation tonight. Not when her defenses were already crumbling. Everything else can wait. Something like disappointment flashed across his face, but he nodded. Drive safe. I'm walking. It's not far. Then be careful. His voice was rough with exhaustion and something else. Something that sounded like fear. Stay on the main paths. The concern in his voice made her chest tight. I will. Lila made it halfway to her car before the tears started. 5 years of buried pain and longing spilling over like a dam had burst. She sat in the driver's seat and cried until her chest ached, until her eyes were swollen and her throat was raw. Then she dried her tears and drove to the guest room that wasn't home, to the bed where she'd spend another sleepless night thinking about green eyes and broken promises and the terrible, wonderful ache of still being in love with someone who'd shattered her heart. The attack came at dawn. Leela was already awake when the howls started. Not the usual morning patrol calls, but sharp, urgent warnings that sent ice through her veins. She threw on clothes with shaking hands and ran outside just as Marcus burst from the main house. Border breach, southeast quadrant, he shouted, his face grim with purpose. Multiple wolves, moving fast. Leela's training kicked in. She wasn't a fighter, but she knew the protocols, had drilled them countless times during her youth. I'll coordinate from the office, get communications up with all patrol teams. No. Kai appeared beside them, already half-shifted, his eyes blazing gold. His canines had elongated and power radiated from him like heat. You're not leaving my sight. Not today. Kai, I'm not a warrior. You're not staying behind. His voice brooked no argument. Carrying the full weight of Alpha Command, Marcus, take 6 wolves and flank them from the north. Drive them toward the river. The next hour blurred together in a chaos of snarling wolves and desperate strategy. Leela found herself crouched behind a fallen log. Her laptop balanced precariously on her knees as she coordinated backup teams while Kai and his fighters engaged the Blackwood wolves 50 yards away. She tried not to look at the violence, tried not to think about Kai in the thick of it, his massive wolf form tearing through enemies with deadly efficiency. But every time she heard him snarl in pain or anger, her heart stopped. Every time she caught a glimpse of his dark fur streaked with blood, her wolf whined in distress. Alpha, we've got more coming from the east, crackled through her radio. At least 8 wolves. Leela's fingers flew over the keyboard, updating positions and calculating odds. They were outnumbered. Most of their fighters were already committed to the main battle, and the backup teams were still 10 minutes out. That's when she saw him. A massive black wolf had broken away from the main fight and was circling around. Heading straight for the communications position. Heading straight for her. His yellow eyes were fixed on her with predatory focus, and saliva dripped from his bared fangs. Leela fumbled for the radio, her hands suddenly clumsy with terror. Kai, there's... The wolf launched itself at her before she could finish the warning. Lila rolled sideways, adrenaline making her faster than she'd ever been. The wolf's claws raked across her shoulder instead of her throat, but the impact sent her tumbling down a steep embankment. Pain exploded through her body as she hit rocks and roots on the way down. She hit the ground hard, her vision blurring. Stars exploded behind her eyelids. The laptop went flying, shattering against a tree with a sound like breaking bones. Above her, the black wolf snarled and began picking its way down the slope, taking its time now that she was trapped. Lila tried to shift, but pain shot through her injured shoulder like liquid fire. She was too hurt, too panicked. Her wolf retreated deeper, leaving her helplessly human against a killer twice her size. The Blackwood wolf was almost on her when a roar of pure rage split the air. Kai's wolf slammed into the attacker with the force of a freight train. They went down in a tangle of fur and fangs, rolling dangerously close to where Lila lay bleeding. The ground shook with the impact. She'd never seen Kai like this. Not controlled, not strategic, just pure lethal fury. He was bigger than the other wolf, stronger, but the Blackwood fighter was desperate and vicious. They fought like demons, claws and teeth seeking purchase, neither giving quarter. When the black wolf's claws caught Kai across the ribs, weaving deep gashes that welled with blood, something inside Lila snapped. Her wolf surged forward, pain forgotten. She might not be a warrior, but no one hurt her mate, not while she still breathed. Lila's shift was rough, incomplete, but it gave her enough wolf to leap at the black wolf's flank as he tried to pin Kai. Her teeth found the soft flesh behind his ear, and he howled in shock and pain. The sound was music to her ears. It was the opening Kai needed. His jaws closed around the enemy's throat, and it was over. The Blackwood wolf went limp, his yellow eyes going glassy as life left them. The sudden silence was deafening. Lila shifted back to human form, her shoulder screaming in protest. Blood ran down her arm in warm streams, but she ignored it as she crawled toward Kai. He was still in wolf form, breathing hard, golden eyes scanning for more threats. When his gaze found her, she saw the exact moment the battle fury faded and terror took its place. He shifted back, not caring about his nakedness or his own wounds as he reached for her with shaking hands. Lila. Jesus, Lila, are you? I'm okay. She caught his hands before he could touch her injured shoulder, needing to reassure him before he could spiral into guilt. You're bleeding too. I don't care. His voice was raw, shaking. When I saw him going for you, I thought... He couldn't finish the sentence. His hands were trembling as they hovered over her injuries. Around them, she could hear the sounds of the battle ending. Victory calls from their pack, the retreat of any surviving Blackwood wolves. But Kai only had eyes for her. "You could have been killed," he whispered. "You should have stayed back, should have let him tear out your throat while you were outnumbered." She tried to keep her voice light, but it came out shaky. "Yes," the word came out fierce and immediate. "Yes, if it meant you were safe." Leela stared at him, at this powerful alpha who commanded respect and fear from dozens of wolves, looking at her like she was his entire world. Like losing her would destroy him. "Why?" she asked. The question that had been burning in her chest for 5 years finally broke free. "Why does it matter so much what happens to me? You rejected me, Kai. You made it clear I meant nothing to you." Pain flashed across his face, raw and devastating. "Leela, no more deflection. No more protecting pack secrets or maintaining your image." Her shoulder throbbed, her whole body ached, but she needed this truth more than she needed medical attention. "Tell me why you really sent me away." Kai closed his eyes for a long moment. When he opened them, she saw her answer in the devastation there. "Because I loved you too much to watch you die." The words hung between them like a bridge she was afraid to cross. "The pack war wasn't theoretical, Leela. Blackwood had been planning it for months. They'd been watching us, learning our weaknesses." His voice was rough, broken. "And the biggest weakness an alpha can have is a mate he'd do anything to protect." She wanted to interrupt, to argue, but something in his expression kept her silent. "You were 18, barely trained. No real fighting experience. Your wolf was strong but gentle. You'd never hurt another living thing if you could help it." His laugh was bitter, "And I was falling so hard for you that it terrified me." He ran a hand through his hair, weaving streaks of blood and dirt. "The night before the rejection ceremony, Marcus came to me with intelligence about Blackwood's plans. They knew about the mate bond. They were going to take you first. Use you against me. Force me to choose between saving you or saving the pack." Leela's heart hammered against her ribs. "So you chose the pack." "I chose you." His voice was quiet, certain. "I chose to break my own heart rather than put a target on your back. I chose to let you hate me rather than let them hurt you. And I chose to let you build a life somewhere safe while I dealt with the war that was coming." But the war lasted 3 years. 3 years of raids and skirmishes and political maneuvering. We finally ended it 18 months ago when their alpha died and his son took over. His laugh was bitter, self-deprecating. "Marcus wanted me to contact you then. But I thought you'd be better off without me. Thought you'd found someone else, built something good." Tears were streaming down Leela's face now. "You idiot, I know. You complete and utter idiot." She pushed at his chest with her good arm, anger and relief and love all tangling together. "You think I wanted safe? You think I wanted a life without you in it? Lila, I spent 5 years thinking I wasn't good enough, that you looked at me and saw weakness, saw someone who dragged down your pack." Her voice cracked. "Do you have any idea what that did to me? I'm sorry." The words were broken, raw. "God, I'm so sorry. I thought it was better than the alternative. The alternative was trusting me." She was crying and furious and relieved all at once. "The alternative was letting me choose my own risks. The alternative was facing it together instead of making that decision for both of us." "You're right." He reached for her face, thumbs brushing away her tears with infinite gentleness. "You're absolutely right. I was scared and I was young and I made the worst mistake of my life." "Which was?" "Thinking I could live without you." More howls in the distance. Their backup teams arriving to secure the area. Soon they'd be surrounded by pack members and medics and all the chaos that followed a border attack. But right now, in this moment, there was only truth between them. "I can't promise I won't make mistakes," Kai said. "I can't promise the alpha life will ever be safe or simple, but I can promise I'll never lie to you again. never make decisions about us without you again. And if I say it's too late, if I say 5 years was too long, fear flickered in his eyes, but he didn't look away. Then I'll spend the rest of my life earning your forgiveness anyway, because you're it for me, Lila. You always were. She studied his face, the face that had haunted her dreams and nightmares for years, the face of the man who'd broken her heart to save her life. It should be too little, too late. 5 years of pain couldn't be erased by one explanation. No matter how devastating, but the mate bond thrummed between them, stronger than ever after the shared danger. And underneath her anger and hurt, love waited, battered and scarred, but unbroken. I hate you, she whispered. I know. I love you. I know that too. If we do this, if we try this, things have to be different. No more protecting me from information I need. No more making decisions about my life without me. Agreed. And when the pack questions whether I'm strong enough to be Luna, you don't fight those battles for me. You let me prove myself. Something like pride flickered in his eyes. Agreed. And next time someone tries to kill you, you don't get to sacrifice yourself for the greater good. We find another way. Lila, promise me, Kai. Promise me we face whatever comes together. He was quiet for a long moment, and she knew he was thinking about all the dangers that came with being alpha, all the impossible choices and no-win scenarios that might lie ahead. I promise, he said finally. We face it together. The sound of boots on rocks announced the arrival of their backup. Soon Dr. Hayes would be fussing over their injuries, and Marcus would want a full debrief of the attack. The pack would want to know their alpha was unharmed, and there would be decisions to make about Blackwood's aggression. But first, Kai leaned down and kissed her. It was nothing like their teenage kisses, desperate and hungry and full of years of denied want. This was soft, careful of her injuries, but steady, a promise and an apology and a beginning all wrapped into one. When they broke apart, Lila saw her future in his eyes. Not perfect, not easy, but theirs. Alpha! Marcus's voice carried down the embankment. Status report. Kai helped her to her feet, careful of her injured shoulder. His hands were gentle but sure. Ready to fix the chaos? Lila thought about the pack members who still questioned her strength, about the political complications that would come from Blackwood's attack, about all the ways being an alpha's mate would complicate her life. Then she looked at Kai and felt the mate bond settle into place like coming home. Together, she said. The pack house buzzed with nervous energy when they returned. News of the attack had already spread. And Lila could feel the weight of dozens of stares as Kai helped her through the main entrance. Some looks held concern. Others held barely concealed doubt about why the Alpha was being so protective of someone who'd been gone for 5 years. The Alpha's back, someone called, and the crowd pressed closer, eager for reassurance. Marcus stepped forward, creating space with his body and his authority. Give them room. Dr. Hayes is waiting in the medical wing. But Kai didn't move toward the medical wing. Instead, he turned to face the gathered pack members, his hand steady on Lila's uninjured arm. The gesture was small but unmistakable. A claim. Before we address anything else, he said, his voice carrying easily through the large room. There's something you all need to know. Lila's heart hammered. They hadn't discussed this. She'd assumed they would take time. Figure out how to handle the pack politics carefully. Ease into whatever they were becoming. Lila isn't just a pack member, Kai continued. She's my mate, my chosen Luna. The silence that followed was deafening. Lila could hear her own heartbeat in her ears. Then the whisper started, sharp, shocked, spreading through the crowd like wildfire. His mate? But he rejected her. She's been gone for 5 years. What about Stephanie? An older woman near the front, Patricia, Lila remembered, whose family had served the pack for generations, stepped forward. Her weathered face was creased with concern. Alpha, with all due respect, this is rather sudden. The pack has a right to know what this means for our stability. It means, Kai said, his voice cutting through the murmurs, "that the woman who just helped me fight off Blackwood's assassins, who risked her life to protect this pack, is exactly where she belongs." "Her bloodline," someone else started. "Her bloodline doesn't matter." Kai's tone brooked no argument. Her actions do. Her strength does. And anyone who has a problem with that can take it up with me directly. Leela felt the familiar surge of frustration. This was exactly what she'd made him promise not to do. Fight her battles for her. Make her look weak by association. She stepped forward, ignoring the sharp pain in her shoulder. "Actually, if people have concerns about my ability to serve as Luna, they should take it up with me." Kai glanced at her, and she caught the flash of understanding in his eyes. He stepped back slightly, giving her space to speak. The gesture of respect didn't go unnoticed by the pack. "I know many of you remember me as the girl who left 5 years ago," Leela continued, meeting eyes around the room. "You remember someone you thought was weak, someone you thought didn't belong." More murmurs, but she pressed on. "I'm not that girl anymore. And honestly, maybe I never was. Maybe what you saw as weakness was just someone who hadn't found her place yet." She gestured to her injured shoulder, the blood staining her shirt. "Tonight, I found my place, fighting beside your alpha, protecting this pack." Patricia's expression remained skeptical. "Fighting is one thing, leading is another. Being Luna means making hard decisions that affect all of us." "You're right," Leela said. "It does. So let me make this easy for you. I'm not asking for your acceptance because Kai chose me. I'm asking for the chance to earn it through my actions." "And if you can't?" This from a younger man Leela didn't recognize. "If you prove you're not strong enough?" Kai growled low in his throat, but Leela caught his arm before he could step forward. "Then I'll step aside," she said simply. "But I won't step aside because of assumptions about my bloodline, or because of who I used to be. If I fail as Luna, it'll be because of choices I make, not fears about choices I might make." The room fell quiet again. Leela could practically see people processing, weighing her words against their expectations. Finally, Dr. Hayes's sharp voice cut through the tension. "Fascinating as this political theater is, my patients are bleeding. Medical wing, now." The crowd began to disperse, people breaking into small groups, voices rising as discussions started in earnest. Lila caught fragments as they passed. "Never seen the Alpha claim A1. I did fight beside him. Still don't understand why he rejected her before. Stephanie's going to be furious." Marcus fell into step beside them as they headed toward the medical wing. "That went better than I expected," he said quietly. "Did it?" Lila asked, suddenly exhausted. "No one challenged you directly. No one walked out. Patricia asking hard questions isn't necessarily bad. She's been the unofficial voice of pack concerns for years. If she comes around, others will follow." Dr. Hayes was waiting with supplies already laid out on gleaming metal trays. She took one look at them and pointed to adjacent examination tables. "Shirts off, both of you." Lila hesitated. The medical wing wasn't private, and she could see pack members lingering in the hallway, clearly hoping to overhear something useful. Something they could discuss later. Kai seemed to read her thoughts. "Clear the hallway," he told Marcus, "and close the door." "I can handle a few curious pack members," Lila said. "I know you can, but you don't have to handle everything at once." The next hour passed in a blur of antiseptic and stitches. Lila's shoulder wound was deep but clean. The claws had missed anything vital. Kai had taken more damage than he'd let on, with deep scratches across his ribs and a concerning cut on his forearm that required 12 stitches. "You're both idiots," Dr. Hayes announced as she finished the last of Kai's stitches. "But you're lucky idiots. Another inch higher on that shoulder wound, Lila, and we'd be having a very different conversation." "How long before I can resume normal activities?" Lila asked. "Define normal. Training, pack duties, whatever comes with being Luna." Dr. Hayes raised an eyebrow at her matter-of-fact tone. "So we're really doing this? The whole mate bond, second chance romance, political upheaval thing?" "We're really doing this," Kai said. Well then, Dr. Hayes stripped off her gloves with a snap. Light duties for a week. No heavy lifting, no combat training, no dramatic rescue missions. After that, we'll see how you're healing. A soft knock on the door interrupted them. Marcus peered in, his expression grim. Sorry to bother you, but we've got a situation developing. Some of the younger pack members are asking questions about the rejection 5 years ago, and Patricia's organized what she's calling a discussion group about Luna qualifications. Lila felt her stomach clench. How bad? Not bad yet, but people want answers. About why you left, why Kai rejected you, why you're back now. The timing feels convenient to some of them. Kai stood, wincing slightly as the movement pulled at his stitches. I'll address it. No. Leela slid off the examination table, testing her range of motion. We'll address it. Together, remember? He nodded slowly, but she could see the worry in his eyes. Together. The discussion group had gathered in the pack's main meeting room. About 30 people, mostly older members and some of the mid-level enforcers. Patricia sat at the head of the long table, looking every inch the concerned pack mother. Conversation stopped when Kai and Leela entered. The silence was heavy, expectant. Thank you for waiting, Kai said, taking a seat at the foot of the table. Leela settled beside him, hyper-aware of every eye in the room, tracking her movements. Alpha, Patricia began carefully, her weathered hands folded on the scarred wooden surface. We're not trying to challenge your authority, but this situation raises questions that affect pack stability. What questions? An enforcer named David leaned forward. Leela remembered him vaguely. He'd been a few years older when she was growing up. Why reject your mate 5 years ago only to claim her now? What's changed? And why should we trust that this isn't just mate bond chemistry overriding practical considerations? Leela felt Kai tense beside her, his scent taking on the edge of controlled anger, but he kept his voice level. 5 years ago, we were facing a war with the Northern Coalition. Blackwood was threatening anyone I cared about. I made the decision to reject Leela to keep her safe. Without telling her? Patricia observed, her tone neutral but pointed. Without telling me, Leela confirmed. Which was wrong. We've addressed that. But now Blackwood's still a threat, David pointed out. They just sent assassins after you both. So what's actually changed? Kai and Leela exchanged a look. They'd discussed this during the long night in Dr. Hayes's care. But talking privately was different from explaining to a room full of skeptical pack members. What's changed, Leela said, is that I'm not the same person I was 5 years ago. I'm not someone who needs to be protected from the truth. And we've learned that trying to protect each other by making unilateral decisions just makes us both weaker. Pretty words, said an older woman near the back. But how do we know this won't happen again? How do we know our alpha won't compromise pack safety for personal feelings? The question hung heavy in the air. Leela could see Kai struggling with it, could feel his frustration through their bond. You don't, she said finally. You don't know that because none of us know what challenges are coming. But here's what you do know. Your alpha just spent 5 years making decisions purely based on what he thought was best for the pack. He rejected his mate, lived with that pain, led you through conflicts and negotiations while dealing with a broken mate bond. And he did a good job. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the room. Now he's got a partner, Lila continued. Someone who can stand beside him, who can help carry the burden of leadership. Someone who just proved she's willing to fight for this pack. Doesn't that make him stronger, not weaker? Patricia studied her with sharp eyes. And if you disagree with his decisions, if your bond conflicts with pack needs, then we work it out. We argue, we compromise, we find solutions together, the same way any leadership team does. But you're not just a leadership team, David pressed. You're mates. That changes the dynamic. It does, Kai said quietly. It means I have something to lose again. Something that matters more than pack politics or territorial disputes. And yes, that's a vulnerability, but it's also a strength. It means I'm not just fighting for abstract concepts anymore. I'm fighting for something real. He looked at Lila, and she felt the truth of his words through their bond. The man who rejected his mate 5 years ago did it because he thought he was protecting everyone. Kai continued, "The man sitting here now knows that protection means standing together, not apart." The room was quiet for a long moment. Lila could hear the grandfather clock in the corner, ticking away the seconds. Then Patricia spoke. "I have one more question for Lila." She fixed her with that penetrating stare. "Why should we follow you? Not because you're the Alpha's mate, but because you're worthy of being Luna. What makes you think you can handle it?" It was the question Lila had been dreading and expecting in equal measure. The one that went to the heart of every insecurity she'd carried since childhood. She thought about the easy answers, her education, her years away, her performance tonight, but none of those felt like the real truth. "Honestly," she said, "I don't know if I can handle it. Being Luna of a pack this size, dealing with territorial politics, managing internal conflicts, it's huge and scary." Some surprised looks around the table. People had expected confidence, not vulnerability. "But," Lila continued, "I know I care about this pack. I know I'm willing to learn, to listen, to make mistakes and try again. And I know that when things got dangerous tonight, my first instinct was to protect what's mine. All of you are mine now, whether you like it or not." A few chuckles at that. The tension in the room eased slightly. "I'm not asking you to follow me because I'm perfect or because I have all the answers," she said. "I'm asking you to give me the chance to earn your trust. And if I screw up, call me on it. Hold me accountable. That's what pack means, right? We take care of each other." Patricia was quiet for a long time, her weathered hands folded on the table. Finally, she nodded. "All right," she said. "We'll try it your way. But Lila—" "Yes? Don't make us regret it." The meeting broke up gradually, people filtering out in small groups. Lila caught fragments of conversation, some still skeptical, others cautiously optimistic. David clapped Kai on the shoulder as he passed. "Good luck, Alpha, both of you." When they were finally alone, Lila slumped back in her chair. The adrenaline was wearing off, leaving exhaustion and the dull throb of her injured shoulder. "That went well," Kai said. "Did it? I felt like I was one wrong word away from a mutiny." Patricia's approval matters. If she's willing to give you a chance, most of the others will follow. Lila nodded, but privately she wondered if she'd bitten off more than she could chew. Being Luna meant more than just standing beside the Alpha during fights. It meant pack politics, dispute resolution, managing personalities and conflicts she barely understood. As if reading her thoughts, Kai reached over and took her hand. His fingers were warm, calloused from years of training and fighting. "You don't have to figure it all out tonight," he said, "or this week, or this month. Easy for you to say. You grew up knowing you'd be Alpha someday. I grew up knowing I'd inherit the position. Learning how to actually do it, that took years, and I'm still learning." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, hands linked across the table. Outside, Lila could hear the pack house settling into its nighttime rhythms, doors closing, voices growing quieter, the building breathing around them like a living thing. Her pack house now, she realized. Her home. "Kai? Thank you for claiming me publicly. I know it would have been easier to wait, to handle things quietly." He squeezed her hand. "I'm done with quiet. I'm done with protecting you by keeping you at arm's length. If we're doing this, we're doing it honestly." "Good," she said, "because I have some ideas about pack security that I want to discuss tomorrow, and some thoughts about how we're handling territorial boundaries." He raised an eyebrow. "Already making executive decisions?" "Already preparing to earn my place," she corrected. "Patricia wasn't wrong. Being your mate doesn't automatically make me qualified to be Luna. But I intend to become qualified." Something warm and proud flickered in his expression. "I love you," he said simply. The words hit her like a physical force. After everything they'd been through, everything they'd lost and found again, hearing him say it openly still made her breath catch. "I love you too. The words came easier now, without the weight of years of hurt behind them. Come on, Alpha, let's go home. They walked through the pack house together, past curious glances and whispered conversations. Some people nodded respectfully. Others watched with obvious uncertainty. A few smiled. Genuine warmth in their expressions. It wasn't universal acceptance, but it was a beginning. In Kai's quarters, their quarters now, she supposed, Leela finally allowed herself to truly relax. The rooms were larger than she remembered, decorated with heavy furniture that spoke of generations of alphas. But Kai's scent was everywhere, making the space feel safe, familiar. Dr. Hayes had given her painkillers for the shoulder, and exhaustion was pulling at her like a tide. I can sleep in the guest room, Kai said, apparently reading her uncertainty, until you're more comfortable with. Don't you dare, she interrupted. I've spent 5 years sweeping alone. I'm not doing it anymore. He smiled, the expression transforming his face from stern alpha to the man she'd fallen in love with all those years ago. Yes, Luna. I like the sound of that, she admitted, settling carefully onto his bed. Their bed. The mattress was firmer than she was used to, but it smelled like him. Even if I have no idea what I'm doing, you'll figure it out. We'll figure it out. Kai settled beside her, careful not to jostle her injured shoulder. The bed dipped under his weight, and she found herself rolling slightly toward him. He was warm, solid, real. Leela closed her eyes, feeling the mate bond settle warm and steady between them. It felt different than she remembered from their youth. Deeper, more complex, seasoned by loss and pain and the choice to try again. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, more questions, the complicated work of building trust with a pack that wasn't entirely sure about her. There would be Stephanie's anger to deal with, Blackwood's next move to anticipate, 100 small decisions that would determine whether she could truly become the Luna these people needed. But tonight she was home, finally, completely home. Together, she murmured as sleep claimed her. Together, Kai agreed, and for the first time in 5 years, Leela believed it completely. Outside their window, the moon hung full and bright above the forest, casting silver light through the trees. In the distance, a wolf howled, not a warning this time, but a song of contentment, of pack and home, and bonds that could survive even the worst mistakes. Leela smiled in her sleep and dreamed of running through moonlit forests beside a massive dark wolf, finally free to claim the future they'd almost lost.